Perhaps you remember while playing MapleStory the ability to party with your friends and enter a special private instance dungeon with just your friends, and upon clearing the dungeon, you're sent back to the public shared world. Well, if you've ever wondered how to implement such a dungeon, you can do just that with dynamic maps. Dynamic maps, as the name implies, allows you to dynamically create and destroy maps as needed. So for an instance dungeon, for example, you can copy the quote-unquote boss level as a special map and send a party of players there. After clearing the dungeon, the players can then be sent back to the original map and the created instance room can be destroyed. There are three main functions in the dynamic map service. Create dynamic map, which takes the source map name to copy and generates a new map based on the provided new map name. Keep in mind that the creation of the dynamic map can only be done in the same map type, static or instance, meaning that static maps cannot be copied in the instance rooms and instance maps cannot be copied from the static room. Destroy dynamic map takes in the instance map name and destroys the dynamic map. Get dynamic map name list allows you to generate a list of all current dynamic maps that have been created. Keep in mind that this doesn't distinguish between the source map name, so instance maps from all map sources will be included and returned in this table. When creating or destroying a dynamic map, you can handle failures by checking the result code that is returned from those functions. Success will mean that the map has been created successfully. Otherwise, you'll see an error code depending on the type of error. This can make debugging and troubleshooting easier because you know the cause. Now, there's a few things to keep in mind when utilizing dynamic map service. When you create a dynamic map, it cannot be destroyed if there are still users in the map, meaning you'll have to teleport all the current users out prior to the map destruction. However, please also make sure to destroy the map, as map destruction is not automatic. So be careful of overhead so you don't keep creating new maps without destroying old ones. The return code of dynamic map is returned after the onBegin play of all components in the dynamic map have been called. So be careful of overloading the onBegin play for maps that you expect to use as dynamic maps. Creating a dynamic map using create dynamic map from within onBegin play of the map you're trying to duplicate will result in an infinite recursion error, so please be careful. And with that, let's transition over to Maker and take a look at a very simple example of utilizing dynamic maps. Okay, so here we are in our Maker, and as always, let's go into Create and click Create New. Create a new world, and let's select any template here. Let's select the diary concept template. We could of course start from scratch, but let's just try using a template this time. And let's click Create New. Okay, so here is our player that will be spawned into our world, and we have a basic map that we have to work with. Let's create a second map, which we will use as our instance dungeon. And we will click Create New Map. We're going to be asked to name this world. Let's name it Dynamic Map Tutorial. So we have our second map. Let's load it in and let's quickly set this up here. So let's go into our preset list and let's choose a background. Let's choose a kind of wintry background here, and then let's choose a tile. And for our tile, we will select, let's say this one, drag across and place our terrain. Okay, looks good. So let's drop in a Yeti monster here, select it and click into the world. And it's kind of small, so it doesn't really feel like a boss monster. Let's increase the scale a little bit and make him a little bit bigger. So I'd say that's a little bit more boss monster worthy. Then let's go into our monster properties, and at the moment we don't have too much in here. So let's add in our combat. We'll go into our window script manager, and there are several default combat scripts that we can drop in just to quickly test things. So let's drop in the monster, import that, the monster attack, player attack, and player hit. We won't need any of these other ones. And for our monster, let's attach our monster attack. And for the monster, let's actually extend this. We want to have our custom version of it. Let's call it Instanced Dungeon Monster. And we can see if we double click it, it is an extension of it. And we have our overrideable properties, our methods, and our properties. So we will get into that in just a moment, but first let's attach this onto our monster. Instance dungeon monster, the extended one we can see here. Attach that. And then let's attach our player side stuff. Player attack. And let's go again. Player hit. Attach both of those. And let's drop in a portal in our main map. So let's save our changes here. I think we're done for now. And let's drop in a portal. Let's drop in this one. And then we will create a new script. Let's create a new component, and let's name this component Dynamic Map Portal. Okay, and let's attach this into our new portal, Dynamic Map Portal. And this will handle our transfer between this map into our dynamic map. Awesome. Okay, so from there, we have our dynamic portal script. Let's open up our dynamic portal script. From here, let's add in our event. We need the portal use event. So let's add that in. We actually won't need this portal user. So for now, let's leave that commented. And this will be called whenever we use the portal. So from here, let's create a new function named, let's say, enter self, enter instanced dungeon. And this function doesn't yet exist, so let's create a new and name it exactly what we just named it. And let's make sure that this execution space setting is a server side. First, let's create an IDX, which is going to be basically an incrementing ID that is going to increment every time we use this portal. So every time this portal is used, subsequent players aren't being placed into the same dungeon. They are being put into their own instance dungeons. And then let's actually create our map. So let's do local result code. This will be the code that is returned from our map creation service. So let's do dynamic map service, create dynamic map. Let's create a property, string of map name, and we will add the map name in the property inspector later. And we'll do map name for our map name, which is going to be the source map name, which will of course be map01. And then the new map name is going to be, let's create another local new map name, and let's name that self.mapName. And we're going to concatenate that with our IEX. And at the end, we are of course incrementing it so that when we call this function again, it will be with the new map name. So let's pass in our new map name into this function. And just like that, we have created our dynamic map. And of course, we have to check if result code not equals dynamic map result code dot success. Then we're going to log out the result code. And we're going to return so that we don't do anything else if that is the case. So now that we have that, what we're going to do in this function is we're going to grab all of the players currently in the map and we're going to bump them into this new map that we're going to create. So let's do local players. Let's name it users equals user service dot get users by map name. And the map name is going to be self.entity.currentMap.name. So that will be the name of wherever the portal is, which is underneath the main map. So the current map that the portal exists in will be our target, and that will give us the users. And once we have that, let's loop through all the users. So let's do index user in pair I pairs users 2, and let's loop through each user. So with each user, we are going to teleport them into the new map. So let's simply just teleport this user into this position and teleport them into our sorry, not this here, will be our new map name. So that takes care of our teleportation into our dungeon. Let's check if this works by pressing play. We'll try a single player first and then see if the multiplayer also works. So, before we do so, let's go into our portal and let's create our map name. We'll grab map01. The spelling and everything is very important, so we'll make sure to name it properly. Then let's try playing again and try to use this portal, and we can see that it works just as well. So we're going to try attacking our Yeti, and we can see that it works. Cool. So now that we have that, when we defeat our Yeti, we want to be bumped back into our original map here. So we will open up our instance dungeon monster, and let's create a property, and we'll name this return map on defeat. And this will be the map that we want to return back to after we defeat the monster. So let's create a method here. Let's override the dead function. And inside of here, we're actually going to not call the dead, but we are going to copy some code over because we don't want it to do exactly what our parent function is. We're going to comment out this because we don't want our monster to destroy. We simply want the monster to just be hidden. Besides this, we're going to keep everything else the same, and let's also create another function here, and we will name this boss start to mark the beginning of our instance dungeon, and another one boss end to mark the end of our instance dungeon. We're going to make sure both of these are client-side functions. Okay, and in our boss start, we are going to play an effect here. So this is just an effect that I grabbed from the MapleStory World's resources, and it's just the start effect. So this will play the start effect. We also want to play the finish effect, and this is just the finish effect. And then now we want to move our players back to our starting map. So the reason I didn't want to destroy this monster is because after this destroy delay, we want to close our dynamic map. We want to destroy it. Sorry, this is actually not the right code here, so we'll just delete that and write our own. And inside of this function, we're going to do basically the same thing that we did in our dynamic map portal. We're going to grab all the players in our current map. So this will be the same map that the Yeti is in, and that will give us a list of all the users. And we're basically doing the same thing. So we're teleporting all users out of the dungeon, and we're going to teleport them back into our return map. So this will be self.return map on defeat. And finally, we have to call boss start. So we're going to do on begin play, and we're going to override our base, and we're going to make sure that we call self.boss start so that we can play this effect. So I believe that should be good. Let's double check here to make sure we're not forgetting anything. So we forgot to call boss end, so we'll call self boss end. So this will be called when this Yeti is destroyed. And let's go back into our map01. And let's extend the duration of our destroy just a little bit. Let's maybe set it to maybe 1.2. And the return map on defeat, we want to set as main map. Again, spelling is important. Let's go back to our main map, and let's press play. And let's enter here. And we're going to defeat our Yeti. And perfect, we are sent back into our starting map. Let's do this again, except let's add in, let's say, 2 more players. Okay, so we've got 3 players in our world here, and I'm going to teleport them all together. If this person uses his teleport, it's going to grab all the players in the map and bump them all into our Yeti map. And we can see all 3 players in here, and then we can fight this boss together. Of course, it's very simple to beat this boss right now. Of course, your implementation will likely be a lot harder. And after we're clear of the dungeon, we're sent right back into our starting map. So the last thing we want to verify is whether or not subsequent entrance into the dungeon will bump each group of players into their own instances. So let's first bump us into this instance. So all 3 of us are in here. And then let's add 1 more player. And let's see if this player is, we are being destroyed back in our other instance. But now when this player enters into this instance dungeon, this person starts its own instance. So it is not sharing this boss, and we can separately defeat this boss. And once I do defeat this boss, we can see that I am bumped back into the starting map. After this group defeats this boss, this group is bumped back into the starting map, and all 4 players are back into the start map here. So something we totally forgot to do here, and I did stress how important it is, and then I ended up not doing it, so I apologize. But we have to destroy our map after we've teleported everybody out of this map. So let's actually do that right now. We're going to cache this because it looks like we're going to use this more than once. So let's create a new variable. Local current map name equals this, and then we'll do current map name. And then let's destroy this map. After we've teleported everybody out, we will do dynamic map service, destroy dynamic map. And then let's pass in our current map name. We're going to grab our error code, local result code equals this. And we are getting an error because this has to be a server-side function. So let's actually pop this out into its own function. And let's name this destroy map. And let's make sure that this execution space setting is a server. Destroy map. And let's pop our destroy function in here. And let's check if result code equals dynamic map result code dot success. So if it's not equal, sorry, if it's not equal success, then we are going to log out the error result code. Okay, and then let's call self.destroy map. And that should destroy our map after we've teleported everybody out of our map. Perfect, so let's try this one more time. Double check to make sure that this does work. We'll enter into our map, and we're going to leave. Sorry, another mistake here. We're going to grab the current name, and we're going to drop that right in here. And let's try this one more time. Let's enter the map, and let's defeat the Yeti. And this time we don't have an error. Okay, just to make sure that it is really done, let's do, we're going to return here so that we don't get this if we don't successfully destroy the map. But let's do log map destroyed, and press play, and let's enter into this map and defeat the Yeti, and go back, and looks like we have destroyed the map. And go back. Make sure to delete our log because we don't want that cluttering up our code. And that's everything for today. Today we've done a brief overview of what dynamic maps are and how they're used, as well as implemented a simple example of an instance dungeon boss fight using dynamic maps. Hopefully you found this content helpful. Happy creating!